it was fun having things like the CP70.
Sure.
But it was a bit of a pain because it had to be tuned, you know. It had real strings. And I remember once
Yeah.
we were doing, I think it was Reading Festival, and the piano tuner was tuning it, and from the audience, a bottle of Coke came flying through the air
Oh no.
and bounced on the piano, and half a bottle of Coke went inside the piano.
Today's guest has played keyboards for Marillion for 42 years. 20 studio albums under his belt, 22 live albums, 6 compilations, 40 singles, 4 box sets. Mark Kelly's Marathon, which is Mark Kelly's solo project. His book, Mark Kelly, Marillion, Misadventures and Marathons, The Life and Times of Mad Jack. I'm beyond excited to welcome Mark Kelly.
Hi, Steve. How's it going?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Look, you've had a long and brilliant career. You performed in some of the world's most iconic venues, including the Royal Albert Hall. Last month, of course, Marillion performed on Close to the Edge cruise. Can we start perhaps by talking about your current keyboard touring rig, and then we'll as we go through, we'll look back a little bit. But just let's talk about a little about that current touring rig. It's fantastic. Looks great.
Oh, well, thank you. It's fairly straightforward. Well, I think it's fairly straightforward. It's kind of grown out of what I used to use, I suppose. So it kind of back in the early days, and we can talk about those old keyboards, but yeah, I kind of had this, keyboards, three stacked in front of me and two on each side or whatever. And that was really because back then, actually when we first started, MIDI didn't even exist. So I think MIDI was introduced probably a year or two after Marillion started. So
Yeah,
the Yamaha DX7 was my first MIDI keyboard.
there you
So
go.
there you go, yeah. But so of course, you'd need a separate keyboard for each sound you were going to play, or you'd have to change patches in the middle of a song, and loading floppy disks for the emulator and things like that, which is, it's not, I don't miss it, I have to say. Um, Certainly added to the challenge of playing live. But then over the years, I kind of slimmed the rig down and got to the stage where there's less and less keyboards, and some people are like, oh, that's a shame you don't have all those keyboards. But it's still useful to have, at least two in front of you and one on each side, which is kind of where I've ended up. Now, all of those keyboards are now kind of MIDI controllers rather than keyboards that produce a sound. Although so at the bottom is the RD 2000, which does make sounds, and I do use it for just a very few songs, not many,
Okay.
because mainly because there was some sounds from the song Quartz that happened to be from a Roland keyboard, and
Nice.
it's handy to have
Yes.
a keyboard that makes a sound that doesn't rely on a computer,
Of
just
course.
for those emergencies. It's never come up, but back
Oh,
in the old days, I've had occasions where things have gone horribly wrong on stage, and just having something you can just play and it works, it's great. Even if it's just the piano or some strings or an organ
yeah.
sound,
Yeah.
just to get you through the gig. So it's kind of a safety net, I suppose, to have a keyboard that isn't just a MIDI controller. Um, so yeah, that's basically it. And obviously the reason I would have four keyboards rather than one is because whilst I could probably do it all on one keyboard, it wouldn't
Okay.
be ideal because it would have to be a weighted keyboard or not. So that's
Yeah.
a choice to make. But let's say I had two keyboards
Yeah.
um, for different patches, different sounds. During a song, you might split the keyboard and have the sounds on different parts of the keyboard. Then you've got to remember where the splits are and what the octaves are, and it gets complicated. Whereas if you have a keyboard you reach for and that's the sound, it's a lot more straightforward. And I do tend to, I think you mentioned in your email about do I have a particular system for, what sounds are on what keyboards? And pretty much I will use the RD 2000 for all the piano sounds, obviously, because it's a weighted keyboard. The lead parts, solos, and things like that will be on that. The one on the top, which names escapes me at the moment.
So that's is that the Arteria
The
Kilo?
Arturia, that's right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Nice
We,
touch on there. Nice
it's a
feel on
really
it.
light, yeah, it's exactly a short travel on the keys, very light
Yeah.
touch, nice to play for faster parts. But yeah, that's quite a recent acquisition, which is probably why I couldn't remember the name of it.
That's a,
Um, but yeah, and the Native Instruments complete controllers are the two on the other side.
yeah.
Uh, the I got that blue one. It was like a 25th anniversary of Native Instruments, I think,
Oh
a
wow.
special edition. It's exactly
Nice.
the same as the black one that I've got on the other side in terms of
Nice.
its, except all the keys are blue. Even the black keys are blue. So
Nice.
nice, except when you've got blue light on in this on stage, and it's or when you spin round to quickly start playing and you do a double take because you don't quite see where the keys are. It's fine when you just when your hands on there and you're already playing it,
Yeah.
but if but it is one of those. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's fine. Yeah, the rest of the band were very rude about it when I first got.
That's great. Oh, that's brilliant. Do you sort of, I mean, I guess you look back through all of those years and I mean, there's beautiful pictures and we'll get onto the book in a moment, but the old Yamaha, the massive, is it the CP piano and things and
Yeah.
then I guess the synths and maybe the mini Moog. Do you sort of is everything kind of in the same sort of place, sort of muscle memory? Okay, that's where the Moog would have been. That's do you do it like
Um,
that?
well, not really, but yeah, it was fun having things like the CP70.
Sure.
But it was a bit of a pain because it had to be tuned. It had real strings, and I remember once
Yeah.
we were doing, I think it was Reading Festival, and the piano tuner was tuning it, and from the audience, a bottle of Coke came flying through the air
Oh no.
and bounced on the piano, and a half a bottle of Coke went inside the piano, which at the time didn't really do too much damage, but over time, all the strings became really dull and lost all their their resonance. So stuff like that was just a nightmare. But I've still got that CP70 somewhere at the
Oh
record
really?
club. Yeah, and I've still got the Mini Moog.
Wow.
That's the probably the only two things I've got from that time. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm sure other people have done this where you think, oh, I'm just going to sell all the Jupiter 8s and the Super Jupiter and the all rare keyboards that you can't get anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and in fact, yeah, the Super Jupiter had a control panel, and apparently Roland only made 100 of them, so they're
Goodness.
extremely rare. And the old emulator one, I gave that
Yes.
to a friend who collected keyboards.
Wow.
So yeah, he's a writer for Sound on Sound. Gordon Reed, his name is. Uh,
Wow.
he's got the most amazing collection of keyboards, and he didn't have an emulator one, so I donated mine to him.
That's great. Just with the so doing all of these I say these iconic concerts. And let's say, so using the recent one with the Cruise to the Edge, are there any? Does that present any particular challenges to you? Just go, okay, that's a different vibe, I guess. That's a different thing.
Well, the cruise, yeah, the cruises, those sort of gigs are always a challenge because we generally take our own equipment with us wherever we go. But in a
Yeah.
situation like that, they were like, um, "Oh yeah, we can supply everything you want," which usually, our tour manager Rich would sort of ring them up and or email them and say, "So can you get this, and this?" And they'll be like, "We told you we can supply everything you want," and then you get to the day before the show or the week before, and they go, "Oh, we couldn't get this. You know, will this do?"
No.
Um, and that kind of happens every time. So um, we take, in fact, on that cruise, we took the RD. Did we take the RD? No, they could supply an RD 2000. That was
Okay.
fine. It's quite a modern keyboard. It's not too
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
The Arturia I took just
Okay.
because it's just good to have at least one familiar keyboard.
Yes.
And they couldn't get the Native Instruments keyboards, but they got a couple of Akai
Okay.
keyboards, which I just said, as long as they're a controller with 5 octaves and a mod wheel and a pitch bend, it's probably okay.
Yeah.
But of course, you never know what you're going to get, and
No.
it can be some of these. MIDI controllers, at the cheaper end of the market. Shocking, the horrible touch on the keys. And anyway, it's fine. It's not a huge problem, especially if it's just one or two shows. But yeah, so of course we always bring guitars, but usually get supplied with amplifiers. That's kind of the trade-off. Bring all your own effects
Yeah.
and guitars. But with the keyboards, as long as I've got the computer and I usually bring the audio interface as well, it's usually fine.
Fantastic. Can I just mention the computer? So is it am I right in saying it's MainStage
Yes,
that
yeah.
you use?
I switched to MainStage about 10 years ago.
Nice.
Before that, I was using um, a, a PC and the system, the rack part of it, if you like, the virtual rack or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
was a thing called Forte, which I'm not sure,
Okay.
which is not made anymore.
Okay.
Uh, it was it was written. The program was written by two guys, and it wasn't a big company, and they were really enthusiastic and good, but they didn't really have the resources all the time to do a really good job. So it was constantly falling over and had problems. So switching to MainStage, I think when they went to MainStage version 2 or something, I think it finally was able to do the things I needed because I knew about MainStage, but it wasn't able to do what I wanted. And then they gradually improved the program over time, and I've been using it ever since. And it is great. It's very solid, and works really well for what I need.
Nice. And so am I right in saying, because I'm still a bit old school, but am I right in saying that with MainStage, you just sort of everything's there. So you select a song, and then all your keyboards would just have the settings that you've sort of created for them, and it would just be ready.
So yeah, so basically you have it's all audio units rather than VST, but it's essentially the same thing, like a virtual instrument. Um, and you basically create a layout of your keyboard rig, and then you can assign different keyboards to, different sounds to different keyboards, and patches for each song, or parts of songs. So quite often I'll have five, six, maybe even 10 patches for a song, depending on the number of different sounds I'm using and the changes. Um, but yeah, it's fairly straightforward to program, and you can and it's quite well integrated with Logic as well. So if I've recorded parts with Logic, I can then save those parts, those sounds, those settings, and literally just load them in MainStage, and it's exactly the same.
Nice.
So that's kind of really useful. I still have to make some changes. Obviously, I tend to play um, stuff where I'd layered things up or whatever,
Yeah.
but basically it's fairly straightforward. And the actual programming side of things, from the keyboard point of view, is much quicker than it used to be back in the old days when around
Nice.
about the time, I think it got its most complicated was around about Brave, where the
Right.
technology really wasn't up to what I was trying to do with it.
Sure.
We had a lot of samples and stuff like that.
Oh,
But,
okay.
it was like, when was that? Mid 90s? Yeah, early
Yeah.
90s. Yeah. So, but these days, yeah, none of that's a problem.
So, speaking about recording, we'll speak next about your two albums I want to talk about particularly. Have you ever sort of got to the end of an album and thought, okay, that's absolutely brilliant. Hang on a minute, I've just got to go pay. I've got to go play that now. Have you ever sort of thought, whoa, maybe I should have played that a little simpler? Or
Yeah, in fact, I did a little recording for the band's YouTube channel, which will be coming out in a few weeks actually, talking about stuff like that, and I demonstrated a few things. Um, so, for example, if I've got like a piano part that I'm playing, and then there's another part that I need to play as well, there's a number of ways of getting around that. One of the things I do is, it's quite straightforward, as I'm sure as most keyboard players would know, with something using something like MainStage, you can map a number of notes or even chords to notes. So
yes,
I kind of found a way of playing both the right
nice.
hand and the left hand part
Yeah,
with just my left hand by
yeah.
cheating. We call it cheating, but you know what I
I
mean?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
play a bit
Absolutely.
like a D, for example, and it will play the D chord,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
then it frees up your other hand to,
Of course.
yeah. And I do that quite a bit where I will basically map the left hand notes
Yeah,
chords onto my right hand. Sorry, I'll play the chords on my left hand, but
yeah,
the left hand part will be played as part of the chord.
yeah.
Then the only hard bit then is if you've got a number of chord changes that you have to make sure that you don't play the notes that play the bass notes in the wrong place. So you
Yeah.
just have to sometimes do some odd inversions of chords just to avoid that, and remember that you need to play. So, or there's occasions where I'm playing a part that isn't a keyboard part, as well as what I'm doing. But generally it's okay. There's been a few things that I've done where I've kind of made it easy for myself when I'm
Sure.
recording it. And then you've realized actually playing this without the, yeah, of a
That's great.
sequence, or of a,
That's great.
can be a bit tricky. So yeah, but generally it's fine.
Fantastic. Just and there's two albums in particular I want to discuss. Of course, you've got many albums. I referenced that in the intro. The most recent Marillion album, An Hour Before It's Dark. You got to be. That's got to be a great feeling to be in a band the time that you've been in and to have the reception that album has had. That's got to be feel
Yeah,
good.
we were really pleased with how people reacted to that album. There was quite a few nice reviews. People saying things like a band at this late in their career shouldn't be making music this good and stuff like that. So it was really nice, and we felt like we'd achieved what we'd set out to do. And I mean, I think a lot of credit has to go to Mike Hunter because I remember him
Okay.
sitting down with us and saying. He was pretty blunt actually. He just said, you guys haven't got many more albums left in you, which is fair enough. I mean, we certainly we're well past the halfway mark of or
Sure,
even with the 75% mark.
sure.
We've made more than 20 albums.
Amazing.
Uh, and so he said this there's no point making an album that's just okay or just good. It has to be the best you can do. And we should just stick at it until we get to that point where we think it's the best we can do. And we all went, yeah, you're right. So, and that was kind of the attitude we had.
Wow.
It took us a while, obviously, to come up with the music, and we I wouldn't say we discarded a lot of things, but a lot of things didn't make it to the final album.
Yeah.
And it's always hard to tell when you're working on it what's going to turn out to be really good and not. And I think one of the examples of that is the song "The Crow and the Nightingale," because
Yes.
when we were working on the album, we had like a top 20, I suppose, of songs that
Yeah.
we were working on. Crow and, I think Crow and the Nightingale was always in the bottom half of that 20. You know, it was never considered to be one of the best songs. It was never I think there was at one point where we were deciding what to include and what to leave off, and it was in the possible leave off list rather than to be included. But then we worked on it some more, and the things we were playing and the arrangement of it was changed somewhat, and it suddenly just came to life, and suddenly it sounded really good, and we were all very excited about it. So what I'm saying is you can never tell, and you shouldn't
Wow.
really give up on things that you think, oh, this is okay, because
Wow.
it can take, one or two parts to unlock a song and make it, really, really fly, so we're now literally just starting on the next one because of Pete's health issues, and now
Oh,
we're in the studio for the first time
okay.
uh, this week, and I'll be heading to the studio after this. So,
Nice.
we're starting off with jamming ideas and
Yeah.
getting a good pool of new things to work with. But we've got quite a lot of old stuff that
Yeah.
hasn't been finished, and certainly we will revisit some of that because it's not bad. It's just not finished.
Sure.
So
So,
hopefully we can do it again and come up with that's the hope. It's a bit of a high bar because we know, with it's probably starting with Sounds That Can't Be Made and then Fear and then
Yeah,
now Before It's Dark. It feels like it got better and better.
yeah.
We had a bit, it feels like we had a bit of a low point creatively in the sort of, the sort of 2007
Okay,
to, I'm thinking of things, albums like Somewhere Else and
okay.
maybe Happiness is the Road. But then we kind of found our
Fantastic.
I don't know what you call it, our mojo, whatever,
Yeah. It's a brilliant album. I just love hearing it. The other album I must talk about, and I was completely unaware of this, and I don't know why, but I've been listening to it constantly, and that's your marathon project,
Oh,
Mark Kelly's Marathon. Oh my goodness. I've so enjoyed that album. So is this was a couple of years ago?
it was yeah, round about the pandemic time, 2020,
Okay.
21. Yeah. I suppose I'd been talking about making an album for probably best part of 20 years. Um, and never really got to the point where felt like I was on it and doing it. And
Yeah.
then just because we weren't doing much with Marillion because of the pandemic and everything, it kind of gave me the time to go, okay, I'm going to do this now.
Wow.
And yeah, I enjoyed it. Um, and I might make another one, but it's just, you know, feeling like I've got the material. And
Yeah.
what I did was, well, a friend of mine, Guy Vickers, who wrote the lyrics, he kind of pushed me. He was like, "Oh, I'd like to write some lyrics for you," and he kind of helped me choose some of the music because I went through some of those old Marillion jams and picked out some things that were kind of my ideas that
Yeah.
I would never get used in a Marillion context. And I thought they were good enough as starting points. And
Yeah.
with working with Guy, we kind of started matching up some of these musical ideas with some lyrics,
Nice.
and then over time it started to take shape. And then when I found Ollie, the singer Ollie Smith, it really came together. So, um, but yeah, it was enjoyable, and it was nice to have the freedom to do what I wanted musically. And I don't know. We'll see whether I do another one. But
Oh, well, I mean, if I could put my 2 cents in, I hope you do. It was such a lovely album to listen to I guess from a keyboard player, because and every keyboard player out there urge you to go listen to this album. It's just, I've so enjoyed it. Just the text, keyboard textures, the writing, everything. I just loved it. Did you record that in real world?
no,
No, where was it recorded?
recorded it at home basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was literally because it was all that lockdown stuff.
Okay.
I I was working with Logic at home. I'd send, I'd make kind of a demo and then,
Okay.
send it to Ollie, the singer. I'd send it to Henry, our drummer, Henry Rogers, who's played on quite a lot of proggy stuff.
Okay.
And Henry would record his drum parts in his own studio and then send it back to me. And
Fantastic.
I'd say, that's good, but can you redo this bit again? Uh, there was a couple of times where he played something, just messing about, and I'd go, yeah, do more of that. So, but literally, that was how it worked. We literally would just pass files backwards and forwards between us.
Wow.
The real world thing was after the album was finished, we went to real world and um, kind of met each other for the first time. Well, I
Oh,
knew Henry,
okay.
and I had face to face work with Ollie, but I'd never met John Cordy, the guitar player. He was recommended to me by Steve Rothery.
Wow,
Um,
okay.
yeah, because I asked Steve played guitar on one of the tracks, um, and I said, "Do you know any good guitar players?" And he said, "Oh, there's this guy I've seen his YouTube videos. He's really good. Check him out." So I contacted him, and he was up for it, and I'd never met him, so we literally
Wow.
worked remotely. So we all turned up at Real World with the idea we were going to record a live version of the album and film it, and that's what we
Okay.
did. So
Nice.
that was the Real World thing.
yours, you strike me as someone that clearly who's worked. I mean, you've done the work over the years, and your lockdown time clearly was useful. I guess the book.
Yeah, very productive for me. I know a lot of people didn't enjoy it, and a lot of people had, and kids lost schooling, and people lost family
Yeah,
members
of
to
course,
COVID. But
of
it was
course.
actually quite a productive time for me, and I had, I don't know, maybe it's just because you've got no distractions and you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book was the other thing that came out of that. Yeah, around about the same time. Um,
Oh, what a great read. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading through this. It's been fantastic. Did you keep a
really,
diary?
no, I didn't. I mean, it was so. I've got a reasonably good memory, but I realized that my memory of things might not be completely like factual, but as much as I could remember, everybody's got their own version of how things
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
And when I first started out with the idea, it wasn't even my idea to write the book. This was something that um, my publisher, Nick Shilton, who's a journalist,
Okay.
he interviewed me at the back end of probably 2020 actually. I think it was for the Marathon album. And he said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book? I think you've got a story to tell." And no, I haven't. And then I thought about it and I messaged him back. I said, "Yeah, that sounds like a nice idea." And I said, "I've got somebody in mind who could help me with it." This journalist, Phil
Wow.
Wilding, who I like his sense of humor and we I didn't know him that well. I know him much better now, and he knows me even better, right? Um, um, but I thought because whilst I felt I could write it down, you read some people's autobiographies that they've written themselves, and they're not writers, and it just doesn't have that spark.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
a bit dull or whatever. Um, so the initial idea was that I was going to just talk to Phil, and he would write it for me. And then I said, oh well, maybe I can just dictate it into a microphone and send it to you. And then I tried that for the first chapter or whatever, and I just didn't get on with it. I thought I'd rather just write it. So I started writing it, and then I would write a chapter, send it to him. He would tweak it. It's one of those things that in the early chapters he made quite a lot of changes, but as the time went on, my writing improved,
Wow.
and and so by the end, I'm not sure whether I was pleased or disappointed that he didn't change that much, but to give him his credit, he did actually make it sparkle in places where he put some good funny one-liners in that I wouldn't have thought of,
That's incredible.
and just some twists here and there that really helped with the telling of the story. So he did a great job, and his light touch, but really in the right places was great. So it felt like it still, when I read it, it felt like it was my writing, but a better version of me. So
Wow.
that was great. And people go, I didn't realize Mark Kelly was so funny. Well, I'm not. And Phil would always rib me about it, about how funny I was and stuff, because quite often few of the jokes are mine, but most of them are his, I have to say. Uh,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Eh,
but it did make it a good read, as you said, and a lot of people
It's a
said that
great
they
read.
really enjoyed it. So that's
It's a great
that's
read.
perfect for me because I got to tell my story in an entertaining way, which is really what I wanted. It wasn't meant to be too heavy, too serious, but as much as possible, it's factual and what I remember I told. I I was a bit brutally honest in places, and some of that got struck out. Um,
Okay.
because either the publisher was like, "You sure you want to say this?" Um, or ex-wives, partners, whatever you want to,
Oh, of
were,
course.
were threatening to sue me if I said anything about them at all. So
Oh,
my personal life is a little bit skimmed over in places, not through my choice, but
that's
um,
okay.
um,
And it ends even. Am I right in saying it doesn't really include the latest album? So perhaps it might be another one.
yeah, that's right. I finished it round about the time I got married. Yeah, so 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the because I had to have a cut-off point somewhere. It
Sure.
was going to be out of date anyway, so that seemed like a good place to end. So that was the reason for that. But and yeah, not much has happened since then in terms
Oh.
of like it's a good storytelling, but um, you know, yeah, you never know. Maybe I can update it in a few years' time. We'll see.
Fantastic.
That's two jobs you've given me now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
An album and an updated biography. Okay.
I'm really sorry. Um, and also, just wanted to mention that you've recently announced, and this has been going on for some time, but you've recently announced for next year, Marillion Weekends. So that's
Yeah,
really exciting.
yeah. We've been trying to do them every couple of years. I mean, I'd be happy to do them every year, but it would take up so much of our time. And I think maybe it would lose the specialness about it. When every 2 years seems about right. But each time we're trying to find new places to play, and now we're up to like 8 weekends. When we first started, we were doing one weekend, back in
Wow.
the first one was in 2002, and then we did another one in 2003 in Butlins of all places.
Nice.
Uh, but it's grown since then, and as I'm sure most of our fans know, it's we're literally playing well the biggest one is Port Zealand, which will probably be the last one at Port Zealand, which because of they are the car parking area where we build the tent for the performance is being converted into like a solar panel park, or yeah, they're putting solar panels above the parking spaces, so
Okay.
that is a permanent fixture which can't be moved.
Oh,
So
oh,
there's no place for us to set up, which is a shame.
okay.
So this Port Zealand will be the last one there. But we do one in Montreal, in Leicester. We're doing one in Paris. We did one in Berlin last time. We're doing it again. We're going to
Wow.
Oslo for the first time. We're doing one in Spain for the first time.
Fantastic.
Um, Not Lisbon this time. We kind of mix it up a bit. We're not doing Poland this time, but we've got where else are we doing it? One in Italy, Padua, which we've done before. So it's a lot of fun. We get to play, do some deep dives into the catalog,
Nice.
things that we don't normally play. We've kind of reduced it down to 2 nights rather than three for most of it. And the ones we're
Okay.
doing 3 nights, we're going to have a, a day off in between where we'll do have something else going on. Just, just we're not getting any younger, and three 2-hour shows in a row takes its toll. Not on me personally. I'm fine with that, but
Oh.
people that have the more physical jobs in the band, singing 2 hours a night. The way that Steve's got an amazing
Yeah,
voice,
of
uh,
course.
but it's hard, and to
Yes.
do that 3 nights in a row, we just wouldn't be able to give the best show possible
Yeah.
on the third night. So I think in Port Sealing we're playing on the Thursday, not on the Friday, then the Saturday and the Sunday. So people usually arrive on the Thursday anyway, so it shouldn't make much difference. They make a long weekend of it, so it
Excellent.
should be good.
Excellent. And check out Marillion's YouTube channel for that.
Absolutely.
So just a briefly, thank you so much for your time, and you've been very generous with your time. But just briefly, then to sort of end off. So looking back through the years, you've had all these keyboards, all these wonderful, wonderful keyboards. Okay, so a quick sort of desert island keyboard. What's you going to take with you?
Well, I'm just thinking about all those really old keyboards, and some of them were complete dogs, really, to be honest. Like the Korg CX3 compared to the organ sounds you can get these days, it
Yeah.
was terrible.
Uh,
Um, the emulator, whilst it was cutting edge technology at the time, can you imagine how much or how little you could do with 2 seconds of sampling time? Actually, it
uh,
was the two halves of the keyboard had 2 seconds each, so
yes.
total of 4 seconds. That's it for your entire multi-sample. Yeah, so it was cutting edge at the time, but absolutely not much use really. Apart from a few things that sounded great on it. I don't know how they managed it. There was a pipe organ sound, but that compared
Okay.
to anything else at the time was great.
Okay.
Um, but generally, and yeah, but at the time, it was in a league of its own, really. Unless you could afford a Fairlight, and I think the Fairlight was probably 30 or $40,000, whereas the emulator was a mere £6,000, which was At the time, you could have bought a small house for that, you
Yeah,
know.
sure. You
Or
had a
maybe not.
Mellotron. Did you have a Mellotron at some?
Uh, in the early days of Marillion, yeah, when I first joined
Yeah.
the band had a Mellotron,
Okay.
which I used until we got the emulator.
Wow.
Uh, and yeah, the Mellotron we had, the first Mellotron we had was terrible. It was in a really poor state. But then I managed to find another one within the first year that I was in the band, the second-hand one that was really nice actually. And I can't remember who I sold it to, but it went. That was a bit of a mistake. The Jupiter 8 was always my favorite keyboard at the time in the
Sounds good.
early 80s. And the PPG Wave 2.2,
Yes.
another horribly expensive keyboard at the time, but it was pretty special sounding because
Why?
nothing like those sounds.
Yeah.
Those really brittle digital bell-like sounds and
Yeah.
stuff. The main sounds on Kaylee, for example, or the big sounds at the end of Incubus, and yeah, that was all PPG. But again, horrible to program. It was had a tiny little digital display, like about this big. I think somebody described it, programming it. That and the DX7 were the same, really. They had, loads of parameters that you could, but you had to scroll through lots and lots of pages to get to them. Somebody described it as trying to paint the hallway from outside of the house through the letterbox.
That's the one.
So
Right there.
yeah, so that was yeah. I'd leave that one in the past. Um, uh, what's which keyboard? I always one of my favorite keyboards at that time was the Roland D50.
Nice.
That was a really nice keyboard. And then of course you had the Korg M1,
Yes.
which was that was like 1990 time, 1991. And then the Wave Station quickly followed that, which was another interesting keyboard. Um, but Desert Island keyboard. Well, the Minimoog, I suppose, throughout all of that, I've kept it and used it. So I think that's one. Yeah, but it's only one note at a time, so we need something else, don't we? Yes. Well, I suppose I think if it was Desert Island time, I think it would have to be a piano, a grand piano,
Yeah.
you know.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Mark. Thank you so much. Look, the work that you've done, so many interviews out there with you. What you talk about, the whole crowdfunding thing. Oh my goodness, pretty much your invention, the wonderful Marillion fan base, and the way that you guys have built up the access for your fans with your YouTube channel and your webpage. It's just astonishing. You guys have done such incredible work, and that's not even talking about the music. Mark, I'm so grateful for your time today to talk to us, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the interview. Really enjoyable.